Getting started. It is 10 o'clock, and I want to welcome everybody that's joining us. We'll probably have people popping on and off, kind of throughout the next hour. But I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We had an outstanding webinar yesterday with Congressman Anthony Gonzalez, and kind of shared a lot of the things with the new CARE Act and some of the nuances with that. So we've been kicking out information as we will continue to do that throughout. So once again, I will introduce myself. I'm Tom Pukish. I'm the president of Wayne Economic Development Council. We are doing these seminars, webinars in collaboration with the Worcester Area Chamber of Commerce and the Orville Area Chamber of Commerce, kind of coming together with one collective voice just to kick out information. And we're just going to have about 2 or 3 of these. Maybe we might have 1 or 2 next week. It just depends on the topics and the timeliness of it. So we want to make sure we're getting the proper information out to our stakeholders. So there's a lot of information going out there right now. There's a lot of emails, a lot of webinars, and so forth. So we wanted just to have our own kind of Wayne County flavor to this. And our surrounding areas as well. So we wanted to bring in people and really talk to our businesses. That way we could have some intimate conversations and some great dialogue and help us prepare as we get through these trying times. So this has been a struggle for everybody, but we're getting through it. We got a phenomenal county. We have great leadership with our businesses from the private sector and the public sector. So we'll get through this. It's just a matter of how efficient, how the best way we can get through it. So I want to welcome everybody. So today we are going to have Magnet. They're going to be speaking. We have Mike O'Donnell. Mike O'Donnell is going to be our presenter today. And I think Ethan Karp will be joining us maybe within the next half hour or so. He's their CEO. So Mike is there. He's the VP of Operations. I think he's been with Magnet for a long time. He kind of oversees the day-to-day operations with them. Magnet has been a great partner with our organization. We bring them in for their expertise working with the manufacturing sectors. They help in their processes and their efficiencies and their know-how. So they bring a lot of talent to the table, and we utilize them as best we can. So today we're going to have them talk a little bit about PPE opportunities, maybe talk a little bit about essential and non-essential businesses, and maybe even touch on one of the hot topics as far as just keeping employees safe. So as businesses want to continue to be up and running, what best ways, maybe some best practices, what are people doing out there to keep their employees safe? So with that, I want to welcome everybody, and I think how we did it yesterday, and it worked out really well. We'll have kind of Q&A, towards the end. So we have a chat function where you can continue to ask questions, and we will try to read those off to you. I have Justin Starlin will be kind of helping that. So you can either email them to us. I think you have our email. Our emails, and or just use the chat function, and we will continue to read those off for you. So I think Justin is probably on the line. If he wants to pop in and say hello, he's more than welcome.
Yeah, just real quick, Tom, thanks for kicking things off. Just again, if you have specific questions at the topic today or something that you think Magnet could help you with, feel free to put those in the chat block or send an email to Tom or I, and we'll make sure that those are either answered live or post the webinar today. And thank you, the Magnet team, for being here. We appreciate your time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good, very good. And once again, with the team, we have Janelle Lee and Darlene McDermott as well, also that they might be chiming in from time to time. But with that, I'm going to stop talking and let the experts do the talking. So, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today, and the show is yours.
Thank you very much, Tom. We're just so pleased to be able to contribute in this time of the coronavirus and the chaos. As you might expect, Magnet is a mission-based. We try to help clients to grow and do consulting services, but we're all working remotely now, and most manufacturers, they're taking a pause, on any types of consulting, which is really great for us because we have shifted completely our whole organization to where we can help. And that's to help the Ohio Manufacturing Alliance to retool manufacturers and provide them the resources they need to make personal protective equipment, which we call PPE. Personal protective equipment is in an unprecedented shortage right now. You hear about it, every day in the news, and you hear about that, and it's very, very exciting to me. All of the manufacturers that are stepping up, all of the supply and demand people that are stepping up as we speak to fill that shortage. So the Ohio Manufacturing Alliance is really helping to guide this initiative, and Magnet is part of that. You can see on the agenda here, we're going to spend quite a bit of time sort of educating you and letting you know what the trends are in personal protective equipment, and also where each of the manufacturers, if they feel like they can help, please step forward and help. We have some other information and links we'll cover at the end, and we'll be distributing data to you that you can analyze and use yourself. What is there's 3 parts to it. We have the Ohio Hospital Association, and what they do is they help us to understand the demand side. Which areas, which products, is it gowns, is it face masks, is it surgical masks, is it level 1, level 2 gowns, is it ventilators? It all varies by location in Ohio. They provide that data to the Alliance. Ohio Manufacturers Association, they know all the manufacturers, and they make the connections into the Alliance. And Ohio MEP, which Magnet is part of, we're the Northeast Ohio portion of that, but all parts of the state, we receive the information in, we disseminate it, and our main challenge and goal, and what we're making progress on, is to help connect manufacturers with suppliers and supply them the technical specs that they need so they can ramp up production. So one example might be someone who's sewing leather in Holmes County, lots of sewers. If they have a pattern to make a gown and they have fabric, they're retooling right now to start making a short supply, which is a gown. So this is the type of groundswell we have. It's an unprecedented time, and it's just really exciting the amount of collaboration we have in all organizations right now. I've never seen it before in my, I don't mean that it was bad collaboration before, I just mean that it's all been sped up. We meet multiple times per day. So you can sort of see what's in critical supply. Diagnostics and testing, you hear a lot about that on the news. Main 2 elements are the rapid testing, which is at a federal level with the large firms, and the swabs. Also the infrastructure in hospitals, they're building quick ones, setting up tents, setting up and refurbishing. PPE, protective equipment, that's the one where the Alliance right here in Ohio is helping out for Ohio. Gloves, these are the vinyl and nitrile gloves that the hospital uses, not the latex ones because of latex allergies, but most of those supplies of gloves were currently made in China and are in shortage. So we're resuscitating glove dippers that are in the United States and Ohio that haven't been dipping. Goggles, gowns, and we'll talk more about these in a little bit. Drugs and consumables, shortage. Medical equipment, people are stepping up now for wiring harnesses, for the valves on ventilators. That seems to be the big demand, and a lot of the machine shops in Ohio are helping out there. Another big one is down in the disinfection, and that's for the alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Current supplies in the hospitals are a very technical supply made by companies like Gojo. It's a very specific sort of a foaming solution that the doctors use, but that's not the supply that's in shortage so much. It is in shortage, but the real shortage is for the field workers, the people out that are collecting at the collection points, the sampling with the swabs. They need something quicker that they can douse their hands down with the gloves on and disinfect, what they're doing. And we have a lot of manufacturing stepping up, with alternate type bottles and solutions here locally. So these are the major areas. I'm going to sort of dig down a little bit now and sort of share with you, how we do this and how we work as a team. You can see the first thing is I need to identify ready go-to sources. So what that sort of means is we don't want to design all new products. What we want to do is look to products that are already in the marketplace and tweak them. Things like give new patterns to sewers. We look for new ideas from the innovative manufacturers that we have. this area as an example for those of you that are studying it. There's many manufacturers now starting up making the shields. These are the clear acrylic or polycarbonate shields that there's a strap over your head. Many different designs are sort of out there. They're making them with 3D printers. The strap on top has been made with 3D printers, with injection molds, all sorts of things. And they're coalescing now with the help of the Alliance to what we're calling as a community design headpiece, where the headpiece can be possibly reusable, and the headpiece can be injection molded or additive printed and made more quickly and be more standardized. So that's an example of engaging the manufacturers. The third area is understanding the specifications. This is important because specifications that the FDA has currently in the environment are changing. In a time of normal supply, they can be very rigid and say it must be made by NIOSH standard XYZ. But in today's environment, they're starting to relax the standards, knowing that they're still efficable, but in the same time easier to manufacture. So as an example of that, we're hearing right now that the federal government through FEMA is relaxing standards on, and they're still efficable and effective, but for some of the face surgical masks that go over doctors' mouths. And so we need to keep and do keep very tight understanding of that through our partners so that we can inform manufacturers of that. Also then, once we have identified areas of work, we have problem-solving teams that are set up in the Alliance, mainly with technical resources provided by Magnet and the other Ohio MEP affiliates throughout Ohio. There's one in each major city. There's 5 others. So we've divvied out the different project teams for the technical work to understand the design and the development and modification of the product, whether it's a slightly different weave on the fabric, if it's a fabric that's maybe made with a warp and beam product, or whether it's a Tyvek non-blown, whether it's a non-woven fabric like Tyvek that goes into the disposable gowns. We have those technical experts that can advise the manufacturers. One of the big areas that you see getting towards the bottom, problem-solving supply shortages. This is a major area of our effort because we have many manufacturers ready to start working. We have sewers, we have bottle makers, we have others, but there are shortages because many of those raw materials are either come from faraway places like China, or the manufacturers of those polymers and raw materials are starting to ramp up. So there's a lot of connection that we do to help make that to happen. Everyone has a role to play in the Alliance. This is really the connections that I sort of talked about. Our goal is to get PPE in mainly 4 classes, which is the ones we know that we have the best chance quickly. There may be others later. Number 1, shields. These are the clear shields that doctors use and others use, just like what your dentist uses to clean your teeth. 2 is 2 types of surgical masks. One is the highly technical surgical mask made out of the high filtration material for in the hospital, and the second is the community mask that many of the sewers are already sewing for people in the community that are collecting samples. 3 is gowns. Gowns are in short supply. There's 2 types of gowns. There's a level 1 gown and a level 2 gown. The level 1 gown is just sewn. They take it, a sewer can make it with the pattern if they have the raw material. You sew it all around, you flip it inside out, and you have a gown. The second type of gown, the seam, where the needle punches through, has to be heat sealed with a heat sealing operation so that it is totally impervious to any penetration. And that's because where the needle punches through, it could leak some virus in. These are 2 types. This is the third area of shortage. Then we have gloves. And then the last one is hand sanitizer. In the major shortage there is really in the bottles. There's plenty of people right now stepping forward to make hand sanitizer. So when we look at that, we have the raw material suppliers we're working with. We've got the hospitals with the demand, all the manufacturers stepping forward, and we are connecting in and researching constantly the specs. And then there's national efforts and the efforts of the economic development organizations, laid on top of that to feed information out and also to give this feedback of what's going on. We have representatives from the governor's office and he feeds that up into his organization. They meet with us daily. So this is all connected and pretty as fast of communication as I've ever seen in my life. This talk just briefly about this is related to the products modification manufacturers to produce them. We have the demand lead, which I discussed with you from the Alliance, and also we have direct connections with several of the local hospitals that we talk with daily, and so we send them pilot samples, small quantities to evaluate and say, yes, no, you're going in the right direction. We also have the supply lead, which comes from all the information we've collected, and then what our engineering technical people do is we have about 7 to 10 people that are actually working at Magnet. We've deemed them essential. They're the only people in the building. Everyone else is working remotely. And so what they're doing is they're rapidly testing and developing these prototypes. You can see some of the key steps there. One is to, just work themselves and experiment, sort of knowing all of the data I provided to you. They make a prototype. We can quickly get it over to the downtown Cleveland hospitals and say, because most of the hospitals have fairly similar specs on these products, and say, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Get their feedback, and as we do that, we can start to get the designs and this approvals out to the community. The ones that's farthest along, as I mentioned to you, is we're very close now to having a fully agreed upon field design that's possibly reusable several times and also standardized, and we call that sort of the community design. And once that's available and sort of approved, we're going to just release out to the community this design so that whoever can make that design, it would be, they can still make what they're making, but they could make this and it would be more preferred. So we're going to be, as we learn things like this, we send out in the community and many other things. So we pulse out daily. Next steps, what we would do is, get the word out to help people to know if we can retool. We have a process which we'll talk about in a minute through the Alliance, where any person, any manufacturer, anybody that has some way that they think they can help in this coronavirus period, we will contact them personally by the phone. We will talk to them. We'll understand what they can offer, and we'll feed it into the system I just described. Also, what I'm finding personally is that people are stepping up in many, many, many other ways other than personal protective equipment. People are stepping up and saying, I have an empty building. I could put hospital cots in here. And we connect them up in the community with the right party so they can do that. We have people who donate. Just yesterday, let me read you off what happened. We had Lorain County Community College let us know they donated hundreds of boxes of medical supplies to the Lorain County hospitals. They detail all the different things they did, very sizable donation. The Cooper Tire Foundation contributed just yesterday 200,000 surgical masks, and 110,000 of the masks were earmarked for the North, and the remaining 90,000 were distributed within the areas Cooper Tire operates, including Ohio. And more will come from these foundations. From another smaller point of view, smaller companies, they're stepping forward. Just two that happened just yesterday, many more, is that small companies said, I have 7,000 pairs of gloves, of the nitrile surgical gloves. Can I donate them? We connected them up with our National Guard representative, Major, and he is taking those in. Another company, a small manufacturer said, I have 20 respiratory masks. 20 is not a big number, but many more people are donating. 20 is more than they had before. These are the N95 respiratory masks that are very difficult to make. I didn't mention them because we don't really have an understanding right now or the technology that we could rapidly spool anyone up. And those are mainly being bought through the supply chains by the big hospitals and distributors through some foreign countries as it is right now. So I wanted to let you know that we do respond to every single person, and we're getting donations to the right places. We have broader teams that are set up across the state and collaborate on those major PPE categories I mentioned. Mainly the last one is we've linked out to very large supply chain people with alternate materials, and we're rapidly researching them. An example would be, without going through all of them, An example would be for the disposable gowns that the hospital uses. It's a non-woven fabric. It's synthetic, and it's made by certain vendors in a certain way, and they're stocked out. So we're looking at alternate vendors during the time period until they ramp up more. It could be things like the lining that's on the outside of disposable diapers, very similar properties. It could be some of the moisture barrier material that they use in construction, very similar properties. May not be exactly what the hospitals use today, but as the demand increases and as we evaluate it, it might very well be that these alternate supplies with these very large suppliers could really be introduced quickly. So just want to give you the sense that we're casting a broad net. Every day we investigate these things. Every day we look at the specs and we try to determine which one of these alternate raw materials can we source so that we can rapidly scale up. Because we know in Ohio and in Northeast Ohio, there are companies that have capacity to make things that are on the PPE list. There are other things, another next step that we think will come down the line. We anticipate, and from our hospitals and the Alliance, there will be further shortages coming. As you all look in the news, as this sort of ramps up and we have more people that need more care, things like ventilators, also some of the more detailed technical products like swabs and other things not on this list may become critical. So we're scouting right now and doing research to understand within the next 2 to 3 week period what other things might be critical so we can launch new teams. Lastly, there's some very unique technologies out there that could offer something, but definitely need technical help. Listing one right there, there's a local company that has a way they can use UV light to for sterilizing ventilator parts and sterilizing masks. There is a person that believes they have a alternate design for a ventilator and can produce it. It does not have FDA approval, but with the proper documentation, getting that to the right people, it might have that. So there's sort of a lot of single points of light that we're also managing to get that information to the right people. They may not be something that happens this week, but over the next couple of weeks, those could very well be something that makes a big difference. So those are sort of our other activities. This slide here, just wanted to recognize all the people involved in the Alliance. I sort of mentioned at first, Ohio Hospital Association Manufacturers and Ohio MEP, including Magnet and others. But as you can see here, it is a lot of partners, and there's others here. I apologize. They may not even be on the list. It's just so hard to update it. On the left-hand side, these are all the partners in the MEP system that provide technical advice. And on the other side, you can see all of the Ohio industry sector partners. And this includes many, many, many. I apologize for anyone that might be missing. My screen is covering some. Let's see if I can move it. Yeah. I just moved my little video feed here. I'm looking down. I can see right now that we've missed some, and I really apologize. I don't see Team Neo on there. They've been instrumental. They've provided probably great collaboration, advice, and also connected up with at least 15 to 20 manufacturers. I don't see GCP on there. I apologize for that. They provided great connections to us to some of the needs and other things that are going on. And there's others I don't see. I just want to make sure everybody knows that there's just so many others that are participating and helping us. This slide here, talk a moment about how you can help. And what I mean by help is anybody who has an idea that they can help. We have a process. We're trying to have it all go one way through this collection process. And if Darlene McDermott, could you please explain why, how it works real quickly, and also why it's important that they reach out through this form stack rather than just individually calling Magnet or calling you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Tom and Justin and everyone in Wayne County for putting this together. As Mike indicated, we have taken the point here for the state in trying to help our manufacturing community organize around and create a database at the state level around fabrication, sourcing, storage, and supply chain, okay, as it relates to all of this PPE equipment. And then we're trying to match make where we can with the healthcare community and make sure that we're doing our part to have those two sectors talk, because typically, at least in the past, the manufacturing sector and the healthcare sector didn't necessarily talk. So to Mike's point, what we've done is create this single point of entry for any manufacturer, again, fabrication, sourcing, supply chain, retooling, maybe current supply, anything along that line, to go ahead and fill out this form. And then my team internally at Magnet is taking the point on going ahead and making contact. So right now, you can imagine, and it's kind of ironic, we're going to use some healthcare terms here. Our intake is overwhelming. We get about 50 inputs a day, but our service level agreement is maintaining very strong. I can't thank the team enough internally who's working behind me to make this process work. Basically, you can rest assured if you're a manufacturer or you are a economic development person referring to a manufacturer, that we are getting back to them with an email within 24 hours, and we are getting back to them with a 30-minute phone call within 1.5 business days. And we are forming the notes that then go into the Google Doc that is reviewed at a state level. So that's really what we're doing. What I wanted to share in the end of my comments here is a quick synopsis of what a manufacturer might expect on that half-an-hour phone call with me. And then what are some of the things and the wins that we are seeing? First of all, what to expect. So typically it is the CEO or the president of the company along with their supply chain leader and their engineering leader that is on the phone having the call. And we go over things like, what kind of equipment do you have? What PPE do you have? What is it that you want to become part of the supply chain in? What kind of sourcing do you have? What kind of material do you have? What are the volumes that you think you can fabricate? And where's your sourcing coming from? And it's those kinds of detailed conversations we're having. And then, like I said, we're rolling all that up. Here are some of the outcomes that are coming out of these calls. I'll separate that into two buckets. So we have tactical and we have strategic, right? So the tactical things that are coming out of this is we really are making a difference. We are absolutely affecting the PPE availability in Ohio thanks to our Ohio manufacturers and this process. I will give you just one of multiple examples. But just one example is in relation to the face shields that Mike O'Donnell spoke about. Also, the swabs that he spoke about. Another example is we had a manufacturer in Holmes County who was able to produce 2,000 aluminum FEMA field beds, okay, the 6500 series, and immediately mobilize to get those ready to go to what is going to be a field hospital in the Mahoning Valley that's a retrofit of a current manufacturing building. So those are just a few examples. I can tell you in Wayne County, I've already had many examples where whether it be from manufacturers or connecting manufacturers to cobble together their own supply chains, we've had many successes, and I've been in touch with Tom and also Lori Reinbold about that. So anyway, that's just a few examples. The last thing I just want to say is I really want to thank the Ohio manufacturers and the economic development partners who have taken the time to refer your information to Magnet. There's no information too small, and there's no information too big. We've got companies in the database that are $4.5 billion companies. We've got companies in the database that are 10-guy shops. So at the end of the day, it's about thank you for what you're doing and keep the information coming. Thank you.
Hey, if I could pop in real quick, Darlene, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that information because you've touched on a few things that I've been thinking about regarding our manufacturers. One of the things is, and I think you kind of just touched on it, but I wouldn't mind if you elaborate just a little bit more on the volume, because there's so many companies out there that they are just they're just trying to wrap their head around everything that's going on right now, and they're dealing with so much, internally, with their employees and keeping their business afloat. But when you look at these PPE opportunities, are they thinking out there? Can we make a difference? Can we, if we retrofit here? But what type of volumes are you looking for? Because I know you said big companies and small companies. Because I think there's a lot of small manufacturers that are on the line right now, and they have their attorneys and their accountants as well on the line that they can refer. But how much should we be encouraging them to reach out, even if they don't think that they can produce the type of volume? So what's the threshold or the sweet spot, if you will?
Sure. It's a great question. And Mike may also want to chime in here too when I'm done. But, from our perspective, Tom, it's really what's right for that manufacturer. Honestly, we do have a triage, again, to use a healthcare term. We do have a triage system set up. We have some internal levers that we push and pull when we need to, depending on what the demand signal is. My general response would be no amount of PPE is too small. If it works for that manufacturer, they need to let us know, even if it's 100 a week. It really depends on what's right for that manufacturer. It also depends on what is the particular piece of PPE we're talking about. And it also depends on what the demand signal is from the healthcare side. For example, we might have a manufacturer that can produce, let's take the cloth over the ear loop face masks, okay? We might have a manufacturer that can sew 100 of those a week. That's wonderful. I also just got off the phone a couple days ago with a company that can sew 1,000 a week. And that's great too, because we don't have any. So any amount is good. Another example would be like the face shields. Those are the plastic face shields with the elastic and metal band that goes around the head. Obviously, those are a lot more complicated, but there again, our plastic companies, our extrusion companies, some of our fabrication, aluminum and steel companies are getting involved. So again, it depends on what's good for the manufacturer. I would tell you that based on what type of PPE you're talking about, no volume is too small because we really have a shortage. And then lastly, if it's a really large volume, or if it's something that can be additive manufactured and we can get them in touch with America Makes and Dave Pearson, that's all good stuff. The last thing I would say is if it's a very large amount, we do have a process in place where if they've got PPE in a large volume that's available right now, then we are absolutely getting that information escalated on the spot to the Major and the Ohio National Guard, that is our resource that's marshaling those kinds of large buckets of availability.
Okay, thank you. I think Mike's trying to talk. We're going to have to ask him to unmute himself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm muted now. Thank you. I would say, and that's all of that is good, but and on top of that, I would just give you some of the demand signals are like gowns. Each hospital says, as many as you can get me, that's how many I need, like hundreds of thousands. So everyone can pitch in, but and I know everyone wants to, but what the real connection here is that when we connect and have the supply chain for major quantities of raw materials, and then we connect it up, and especially the bigger sewers, because I know there's sewers out there right now. They're in our database. They have 200-300 sewers that can sew, and so for them, when they switch over, it's going to make a big impact. And then that's not to say that home sewers that can do 5 or 10 a day. And as an example, university hospitals, right here is passing out kits, which you can go pick them up at the different locations, and home sewers are picking them up. And my wife picked up a kit, and she's sewing them on her sewing machine, and then you go turn them back in. So I would just sort of say this is something where we can all contribute. if it's something that we have the technology and the assets for in our manufacturing. Sewing is one that if you have sewing machines and you know how to sew, that's going to be a real quick spool up. Assembling of a sort of that face shield is going to be more challenging because there's multiple parts involved. And so each business can evaluate that themselves. And if they have the competencies for it, we can help.
A quick question here for the panelists. We've had businesses mention the fact that they want to help out, but a couple of the fears is just the time of getting online. The time of switching out their shop, they may be able to control that, but maybe you can speak specifically on, as an example, how quick does it take to get connected to Magnet? Some of the fears here, not fears, but hesitation, is that government bureaucracy and the idea of them shifting things up or helping, their time frame in that is somewhat concerned with them.
So my response to is that this alliance that we have is really is not the government. I mean, we don't go through the federal or the state government to provide support. We have our own funding to do our mission, and I can assure you that you can go on. It says, oh, this is the Alliance Ohio Manufacturing that we're part of. If you type it into that form, there's like 5 questions. They're very simple. They ask you things like your name and your email and your phone number and what do you do? What do you think you can do? Do you have any raw materials, as Darlene said? And how long do you think it would take you to make it? And do you have any excess capacity? That's really it. And so then with that, then that's all we need to help. And you will get a call, every one of you, in terms of that. Now, in the same time as you do that, if you think about your manufacturers, I mean, you obviously want to make sure you thought about things like, do you have staff? Do you have workers? Can you maintain a safe work environment, which we'll talk about later, with all the, staying 6 feet apart and contact surfaces and other things, and assuming that that's okay for you. And then sort of the other question would be, how long do you think it would take you to mobilize? If it's something you can do to mobilize this product, if we made the connections and got the raw material and the specs to you, could you mobilize in the next, say, couple of weeks? Great, because the coronavirus is going to be here. If it's something that to get that done or whatever, to mobilize, it might take several months. That's still good, but probably from everything we know, and I don't know really that we do know it, but we sort of think that if the coronavirus and some of the needs are going to diminish a little. So if you're one of the people that can switch fairly quickly with your assets, with your machines, please step forward, because this need's going to be there at least for a couple months. And again, I'm just sort of estimating that based on the data we're getting. Does that help, Tom?
Yes. So just a quick question as I look at this, and we're talking about the manufacturers trying to move into the PPE. And do you help them with just coming up with price points and things like that? Because in a sense, you have so many people that there's businesses that are, in a sense, donating money and supplies, and you have grassroots efforts out there that are donating things. You mentioned like sewing kits and doing, sewing at home. How do you balance all that? And, as far as like who you're receiving the PPE stuff from?
Okay, maybe I'll try to partition that into sort of two comments. One is that many organizations are just electing to donate, and they're saying we can make these things and just get them into the supply chain, like gowns. They say we're just going to sew, and if they have raw materials, they sew and just supply them. So some companies are saying I'll donate that, and although it's a little unclear right now, and I haven't really thought it through completely, but with the new $2.2 trillion, package that came out, and paying all workers their salary for this certain period of time in unemployment, I think they've found out ways that it sort of makes sense that they can still reimburse the bulk of their employees. So those some are donating, others are making the product, and albeit it costs more to make it in a smaller batch, than it would be in mass production. And what we're seeing right now is that the price points are going up, and the hospitals are obviously willing to pay more now than they did just, maybe just a week ago. It might be that in the past, it might be $5 for a mask. That might be cost, a shield rather, I said the wrong thing, but now it's up to $7.50 or $10. So as this occurs, the prices are moving too. So, but nonetheless, the hospitals know they have to pay more because the production's not there yet. So we do know what the price points in the past were for these products, but we do know also that hospitals are starting to be willing to pay more because obviously they have to, correctly subsidize the manufacturers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. So once again, some of the other areas that we talked about beyond the PPE is just, I think so many businesses are looking at, they want to continue to stay afloat, stay in business. They consider themselves, most manufacturers consider themselves essential. And there's this kind of fine line between essential and non-essential. Can you talk or elaborate a little bit on that, and even maybe talk a little bit about maybe some best practices regarding employee safety, as far as when you do bring employees back on board, what are some of the companies doing out there to make sure that their employees are safe and out of harm's way?
Okay, what I'm going to do is partition that into two questions, if that's okay. The first is, if you have deemed yourself essential, what things can you do to be safe at work? And then the second is maybe a little discussion on what does that actually mean, essential versus non-essential. So I just advanced the slide and you'll have this. Item number one is we've compiled what we have observed in industry as best practices to keep your employees safe. And there's many things in there. Obviously, the one that's not in there is stay 6 feet apart. I mean, obviously, we've heard that over and over, but many other things that you can do. Has to do with a couple of major categories. What you touch with your hands and then rub your face. That's a big one, okay? Touch with your hands and rub your face. And then when you walk around and think about that, there's many different places that occurs, which are in this document. Examples might be doorknobs, doors, elevator buttons. There's just computers. Everything that you can think about that you touch could have the coronavirus on it because somebody that has it and doesn't know it. So this whole touching and retouching, even if you're 6 feet apart, especially, and this is not just in a factory, this is everywhere. Retail, your grocery store. So that risk factor, there's some things elemented there. What many people are doing is just taking the doors off. Why do we need a door anymore? Just take the door and lay it down. So for people, if they're in an office, there's no doors. You just walk in. In the factory, it has to do with if two people run a machine, you can't clean it every time, but maybe you dedicate machines. Other things like at shift change in a factory. Normally you get everyone together and you talk about how did it go and they all stand in a huddle. Well, that doesn't sound so good. You got 20 people standing right up in front of a board looking at the production. Got to come up with another way. There's some suggestions in there, like maybe you have a video conference between rooms. You have 3 or 4 lead operators and you use Zoom within your building so they don't have to stand right next to each other to talk. Because I think science has shown, and again, I say science has shown because we really don't know, because there's so much research being going on, but what they think is happening with the transmission, there's the hand transmission, but there's also the transmission of distance of 6 feet. The 6 feet isn't so you don't touch somebody. The 6 feet is because they believe when you're talking, that's the best. Just talking with your mouth generates sort of a very fine aerosol. It doesn't make spit pop out like big balls of spit. Those fall down right away. But it's like this aerosol, like that you can't see of a mist of your, it's like a cloud is around you when you're talking. So that can even extend up to 20 feet. So if we think about that, even with workers that are sort of sitting in different cubicles, it's about putting a barrier between them. It could just be all of our open offices where people are sitting 4 feet apart. If you can just raise a barrier, that's going to sort of screen that. And there's lots and lots of tips in there for virus-free at work. So I would offer you to, consult with that, check that link out. Any questions on that one?
Hey, Mike, this is Darlene. I just wanted to pop in a moment or
Yeah.
two while we wait for questions. I wanted to offer that after this call, I'll provide Tom and Kelly and Janelle the names of a couple sanitization companies that we've come across that Magnet has done work with in the past, but now is focused on sanitizing industrial spaces, now post coronavirus when folks are going to go back to work. So I echo everything Mike said. I wanted to throw that out. And the last thing I wanted to throw out, actually from the risk management perspective, is there's been a lot of talk in the risk management world this week and last week around exactly what Mike O'Donnell just said about the droplets. And many of you are probably familiar with Legionnaires and how Legionnaires is passed through air conditioning and HVAC systems. So one thing that's circulating also in the risk management world very heavily right now is simple things around changing filters and cleaning ducts. And there are chemicals and other things that you can do to do that. So I wanted to mention that as well. Thank you.
So let's shift gears for a moment to talk about the essential and non-essential. And again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not in the government, but the governor wrote, I think the understanding sort of that's out there is the governor wrote that, and the administration, whatever you want to call it, wrote that to be a little bit ambiguously vague so that there could be some discretion, so that people could use their best judgment on what essential and non-essential means. Now, the spirit of it, if you look at the guideline carefully, the spirit of it is that as the economy is shutting down now, and at the federal and state level, it is being shut down. And with the new CARE Act that came out, it's encouraging people to stay home and paying for them to stay home. That's what it is. And so as this thing shuts down, and it's those essential things that we need to stay in our homes and be safe and not interact a lot and have to be within 6 feet of people. So if you take a careful look at the guideline, it lists all the things that logically would sort of make sense, like electricity, power, sewers, truckers, food services to get those things in and out, the things that go in the grocery stores, because you've got to have hand sanitizer and vegetables and meat, so you got to eat. And so when you trace it back, it looks sort of general. So if you think of it from a product category, I think the spirit, this is my interpretation, again, I'm not a lawyer, but the spirit of it is that we probably really don't need to be building furniture right now. Is that essential that we can go out and buy a chair? Is it really essential that that I need to put carpet in my house right now? I've got carpet in my house. So when we think about what's essential and what's not essential, to me, it's more the governor's given us latitude to make those decisions because we're all professionals and each business owner knows it in their heart. And it's that if it's not essential, maybe I'm a place that installs carpet. Well, right now, maybe I'll stop installing carpet. And with the CARES Act, if you take a look at that number 4, the federal government now, has provided full relief and again, that's in that document for those of you maybe that haven't studied it yet, the full relief of the forgivable loans, also the acceleration and lengthening of the unemployment. So there's multiple options that if an employer now decides to shut down and he deems that he is sort of, non-essential within those guidelines, they have support through the CARES Act to, make them whole and give them the money they need so that they don't suffer, that manufacturer and the employees. So that's, I think that's, it's a lot of judgment. I think it's a decision that each manufacturer and each business owner has to make.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mike. And once again, we're gonna wrap up. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on today just to discuss some of these things, especially about the PPE. I think this was really good information, and I think it'll get people thinking as far as what they can do, and hopefully encourage more people to get involved and be part of the solution. So this was really informative. I appreciate it. What we're going to do is um, get some information, maybe from you guys. We'll kind of summarize some things. Some of these contacts and these links are very helpful. So we'll try to push these out to our base, especially the people on board. And maybe even the PowerPoint, if that's appropriate. Maybe we could even push that out to people that have been in the calls as well. So
You're more than welcome. Please push the PowerPoint out.
Okay.
We hope it's useful.
all right, great. All right, great. Thank you so much. So, okay, with that, once again, things are changing so fast. So we might tap you in the future just for some additional information, if necessary. So. Once again, thank you for being a part of it. Darlene, Janelle, thank you again. Justin and Lori, I appreciate your help in all this. And once again, thank you, Mike. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to either myself, Justin Starlin, or Lori Reinbold. And then we would be happy to push these questions on to the Magnet team. So thank you very much for today, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you very much for having us participate. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.